day today. So today we're going to talk about, there's a lot of talk lately about President Trump getting the Nobel Peace Prize. And if we're just looking at it on face value, he's got quite the resume in a little over 6 months. Peace between India and Pakistan. He's saying Serbia and Kosovo, DRC and Rwanda, trying to make peace between Ukraine and Russia, trying to make peace with Israel and the Palestinians. So he's been quite busy on the peace front. And so there are a lot of people saying that he should get the Nobel Peace Prize. And I guess if you just look at it from face value, within a little over 6 months, he's done quite a bit to further peace in the world. No doubt, regardless if you don't like the man or not, he's done it. And I bring that up because today he was meeting with, I think, 5 African leaders from different African nations. They were having a luncheon. And so, of course, he had a press avail beforehand. And the young lady from the DRC, who's the only African correspondent to the White House, she's become quite popular lately. When President Trump, let her speak at the ceremony after the signing of the peace deal between Rwanda and DRC. She's from the DRC herself. A very nice looking young lady from the DRC, very well spoken. He had called her up, and then of course she had mentioned she's the only White House correspondent from Africa, the only one. And so he saw her today at the luncheon, and he wanted her to speak first for the media. That's pretty obvious why he would do that. And he likes her, and she's been very positive towards him so far. And so she asked the question. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but y'all know who I'm talking about. And she asked the question. One of the questions. She asked 2 questions. One to the president, and one to the African leaders. They were sitting at the table. And one of those questions was, would you support him getting the Nobel Peace Prize, or do you think he deserves it? I'm not remembering verbatim. And all of them, from one of them's like, well, I don't know anything about that, but if what he's doing it qualifies, then yeah, I would support it. All 5 of the leaders said they would support it, even though most of them know they have no say-so in it. They would support it because of what he's doing all around the world as far as the peace process. And I thought that was kind of cool because, as we know, China is very influential in Africa. And they're making a lot of headway in Africa. And all this, of course, is political, and it's all about influence. So I'm sure President Trump's meeting with at least 5 nations today, and I'm sure it'll be more, was part of that, wanting to be influential on the continent of Africa. He mentioned Sudan and how there's some plans to try to get peace in Sudan. Possibly, I think he mentioned Libya as well. And so, I remember the other question she asked would he be willing to, visit Africa? And he said yes, he'd be more than willing to visit Africa. And I actually hope he does. I hope he does, because that would show a lot of the African nations that he's willing to actually visit personally to these areas. And so I hope he does. And he said he's definitely willing. And I think he should. So right now, he's definitely got the resume for it. I don't know what the committee looks at, the Nobel Prize committee looks at when it comes to their Peace Prize. But President Trump definitely, so far, has the resume for it. I don't know of anybody else who would even qualify for it right now. So we'll see. Do I think his chances are high? No, but right now he's definitely the leading candidate, in my opinion. He's definitely the leading candidate for the Nobel Peace Prize, just on the efforts of DRC and Rwanda alone, but including those other things, that I had mentioned, at the beginning. Like I said, like him or not, he's definitely making strides towards peace. That's undisputable, and the facts are there. But you're always going to have your haters, and you're always going to have the people that, no matter what he does, they're going to hate him. They're going to do all kinds of things, and so we'll see. Now the other topic is that now your churches are able to support political candidates, which you weren't able to do. You're, violating, law, basically, especially if you're on tax exempt status. You weren't able to do, I think what presidents called the Johnson Act, I believe. But now that's been freed up, and now churches can support political candidates. I think it's a mistake. I honestly think that was not the right move to make. Even though President Trump was all for it, I think it's a bad move. And you're like, well, why? Well, I'm going to tell you why. Because from my experience in the church I belong to, the Church of God in Christ is a Reformation I belong to, it's going to open up Pandora's box to all kinds of socialist, communist, leftist ideas that already exist in the black church, but it's going to make it even worse, and it's just going to open the floodgates for pastors to support all kinds of crazy nonsense candidates that are pushing non-Christian beliefs, but they're going to support them because they're Democrat. It's just going to make it a whole lot worse. And then on the flip side, on the white churches that are predominantly Republican, the ones that really espouse stuff, is going to make it worse on them too. So it's not just the black churches, but I bring that up because I'm a member of one, so I can talk about it. But the white churches too. I think that that whole thing should have stayed in place. Churches are not the place to talk about politics. Period. Not the place to talk about politics. Not the place for it. Not the place for it. And I'm going to stand on that. The church is not the place for politics. Not the place for politics. And I just don't agree with it. I just don't agree with it. I don't agree with it at all. I think that it's a mistake. It's definitely a mistake. means go vote. That's what you should do. Go vote. But I tell people, vote. I tell saints and Christians that we should be voting for the candidate that best matches our biblical principles. Period. Whether that be a Republican or a Democrat, the candidate that you should vote for is a candidate that best meets our biblical principles and beliefs. No candidate is going to be perfect, and you're not going to get everything you want. But you pick the candidate that comes closest to what you want. And that's in anything. That's local, state, and federal elections. And I think that, that keeps the church out of it. That lets people do what they're supposed to do as individuals. Go vote. And we, as saints and Christians, should be encouraging them to vote for the candidate that best matches biblical ideals, whether that be a Republican or a Democrat. And that's what we should be saying and nothing else. We shouldn't be trying to endorse a candidate, because as a member of a Black Reformation, of course, our presiding bishop and all the leadership just about were endorsing Vice President Harris in the last election. Only one bishop wasn't. Everybody else was endorsing Vice President Harris, even though she was the furthest from biblical ideals. I mean, the furthest. Had no intention of supporting biblical ideals. In fact, the exact opposite. So, I think it's a mistake. I think it's a mistake. I think it's a slippery slope for both black and white churches, possibly even Hispanic or Asian churches, just churches in general. Again, I could talk about the black church because I'm a member of Black Reformation. I sit under a black pastor, and I'm the only white person in my church, and one of very few white members in my Reformation. So I could talk about it. But I understand the white churches do the same thing. So, in my opinion, and from my experience, politics need to stay out of church. This is not slavery times. This is not Reconstruction. This is not that time where the church served as the meeting place for everything, because the church was the only place you could go to, that they allowed you to go to. So that everything happened at the church. Well, the church doesn't need to be the meeting place for everything anymore. The church needs to go back to what it's supposed to be. The place to hear a word from the Lord, okay, and to be able to worship, praise and worship the Lord. As, physically, communally, as a congregation, because the Bible tells us to come together. To not forsake the assembly, and I'm paraphrasing, of ourselves, to come together. I'm not saying that you can't have online church, but what I'm saying is that's the reason for church, is to be preached to get the word from the Lord for you, and then to be able to take that word and apply it. That's why we go to church. We don't go to church to hear politics. We don't go to church to hear social issues. We don't go to church to hear all this other stuff. We go to church to hear a word from the Lord. That's why we go to church. Period. That's why we go to church. That's why we go to church. And I'm going to stick to that. I am not budging on that. I remember telling a former pastor when I was living in New York, when he brought a local candidate in and let them speak. I told him it was a mistake and I didn't like it. And what made it even worse is he allowed him to come to the pulpit and the platform. The pulpit and the platform are supposed to be sacred ground. So So if you're going to invite somebody to speak that's not clergy or whatever, then you have them speak from the floor, not the platform or the pulpit. My opinion. And I was upset. I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. It doesn't matter that he was a Democrat. I didn't want him. I didn't think the church was the place for him to speak his little political whatever, little spiel. That's not what the church is for. Politicians can speak anywhere, community centers, whatever, and people can go and listen to them there. The church is not the place for that. Believe me, if they want to vote for you, they will go where they need to go to listen to you. They'll see the TV commercials or the radio spots or the Facebook posts or whatever. It is what it is, and I don't like it. I think, like I said, I just don't like it. I just don't like it. I just don't like it. I don't like it. I just don't like it. I just don't like it. I just don't like it. I really don't. I really don't like it. I just think it's a mistake. It's a mistake, and it's just a slippery slope. And I think what it does is it gives these social justice pastors that we have running around even more of an excuse to talk about social justice and politics instead of the word. And it's just a shame. It's a shame. And I know that this was probably done so that these pastors and churches can have the freedom. They don't have to worry about their 501c3s being taken away and all this other stuff. I understand that part of it, but it's a mistake. It's a mistake. And y'all already know how I feel about churches having 501c3s. You're essentially a slave to the government. The government owns you. Our church doesn't have a 501c3, thank God for it. Now, as a local church that belongs to a Reformation, we technically are covered under the Reformation's 501c3. But as an individual church, we don't have a 501c3. These churches think that, 501c3 is great and all this other stuff. It really isn't. It just gives the government control over you. That's all that, and that's really all it is, in my opinion. So, I think that, it's just one of those things that I'm just not seeing good things happening from this, especially in the Reformation I belong to, especially online, and especially from these either very right-leaning churches or very left-leaning churches. It's going to be a mess. It's truly going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess. It's truly going to be a mess. So, that's all I have to say today. Let me know what y'all think in the comments below about President Trump potentially getting a Nobel Peace Prize, and the law being changed, or the legislation being changed that allows churches to now endorse political candidates freely. Let me know what you think. like, subscribe, hit that notification bell if you like what you're hearing. When you leave the comment, as always, be respectful. I don't have a problem with dissenting opinions, but be respectful. And let me know what you think. Share it with somebody if you like the content. And as always, I appreciate everyone that likes and subscribes and posts and has viewed any of my videos. I am very appreciative. I don't look a gift horse in the mouth when that happens. And again, I appreciate every one of you. And so until next time, God bless you.